You're listening to Leaders Unedited with Keo, a monthly podcast where your host and Keo CEO, Margaret Mansfield, sits down with inspiring leaders making waves in Australia and beyond.
Welcome to another episode of Leaders Unedited. I'm your host, Margaret Mansfield, and I'm delighted to have with me today the CEO of the Royal Flying Doctor Service of Western Australia, Rebecca Tomkinson. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thanks, Margaret. It's a pleasure to be talking with you.
Lovely to have you. Now, I'm sure this is a question you get asked a lot, but what went through your head when you were offered the role of CEO of such a loved, iconic organisation?
There's genuinely a moment of, oh my gosh, and then a real sense of humility. It's extraordinary, the story of the RFDS, and to have the opportunity to be a part of such an important Australian story, and to fully understand the responsibility that comes with continuing to build on that 90-year legacy is incredibly humbling.
So a big gulp moment, I would expect.
Sincerely, and I know leaders aren't quite supposed to talk about it like that, but absolutely. And I think that is a genuine appreciation of the complexity of the organisation. So today and throughout the last year, we've done a little on 28 flights a day in WA. We've done the biggest year in the history of our service ever. And in coming in, looking at building the future for the organisation, understanding the integrity of the foundation story, but also shaping that for what we find nearly 100 years later is such an important co-design piece for us and our team.
So that's a really interesting paradox, building on this legacy and then also making changes for the future. So how easy was it for you to make changes when you stepped into the role?
Yeah, I don't think change is ever an easy piece for organisations, and certainly established entities as they look to emerge into future industries or embrace what is occurring with technology or indeed disruption in markets. I feel that I was in a very fortunate position where the board was clearly looking for a future direction. So having that clarity coming into role around shaping what the next 10 years looked like for the organisation. The first thing I really did was spend a lot of time just on my own, going across, we operate across all 2.5 million square kilometres of WA. And we've got bases in Broome, in Port Hedland, in Meekatharra, in Kalgoorlie, and of course at Jandakot, and talking to all of our teams. One of the really special things about the Royal Flying Doctor Service here in WA is that we live and work in the communities in which we operate. And I spent time just listening to everybody to get a sense of where we were at. And then I shared what I'd heard. To work together to build what we all saw was the future for the organisation. And I think that's the important part about change, is it can't just be done to an organisation. It needs to be something in which the organisation itself is looking to value, identifies, and actually has a deep appreciation needs to occur, because then we've got a vested interest together to build on that.
Absolutely. And one of the things you talk about in that, looking at the next 10 years in your strategy is you mentioned collaboration a lot. So, collaboration with health partners, collaborations with communities, with a whole bunch of really important stakeholders. How would you define collaboration for the RFDS?
It's so important. Collaboration has to come from a genuine place. So for us, working alongside particularly Aboriginal communities, we work really closely with Aboriginal medical services, and we come in at that invitation and not with any sense of expertise, because we're working with a community that already has those, but we are adding to that skill base. So collaboration in its authentic sense is really listening to each other and truly respecting the different views that the organisations bring to the table, because then we get the best possible outcome for the people that we are there to provide a service for. And for us, we are part of a huge network of healthcare providers in WA, and we play a small part in a much bigger system, and a part that's very important. So really understanding the strength that we can bring and then being able to leverage the strengths of the other organisations, we are able to get the best result for people. So that collaboration is appreciated, particularly as West Australians, because it is a big place and it's got a small population, that we're much stronger together. And I think that being able to bring the respective skill sets really ensures that we're able to provide a stronger service, one that's bigger than any individual part of it.
And how do you build, because a lot of organisations we work with, they speak about collaboration and they talk about building this capability inside the organisation. How are you building that collaboration muscle inside your organisation?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think as a community benefit organisation, and I don't say this as a kind of a criticism of the sector in any way, but traditionally it's been hardest to invest in our people because we're very focused on the service delivery component of that piece, and the funding mechanisms sometimes limit what we're able to be able to provide in that development space. And what's been fantastic about the last sort of 10 years in the community benefit sector is that focus on people. And for us as an organisation, we are a service that delivers a service to people by people. So our people are absolutely our most important asset, and the more we can invest in them to really ensure that they have the skills and I think as well with collaboration, the language and the techniques to be able to invest the time that it takes to really have those collaborative conversations and to really build authentic partnerships is about a relationship. And relationships take time, and often, particularly in business, that time is very precious, and we need to ensure that we are able to provide our people with that level of time. That's been challenging, particularly over the last few years. I know every single organisation, as we've all looked to what we need to do to manage COVID-19, for us, it's changed every part of our operating model, and our teams have needed to work with that, as well as new infection control measures. And then, of course, learning more about how we operate as an organisation and what collaboration really means to each other.
So how has the pandemic tested your leadership specifically?
Yeah.
It's obviously
it has
changed your organisation significantly, but what about your leadership?
Yeah, I think a real moment for me, and it's hard to recall for people because, you know, when the pandemic first occurred at the beginning of 2020 there, it was truly terrifying, Margaret. Like, I think it can't be understated just how literally terrifying. You know, we were getting real-time information from the emergency departments in London, in New York, in Rome. Our clinicians had colleagues, friends who were dying from something that we still knew very little about. And we were on the front line of the provision of those services to look after people in WA. And, you know, as a team, we were going to need to send our people into an unknown environment, knowing that the impact globally was people dying. And so that's a really confronting place to be as a leadership group and as a leader. The most important part of my role is to ensure the well-being and safety of each and every one of our team members. And we just didn't know. Yet we also knew that it was so important to West Australians that we were able to provide a service, one that was relied upon. So we had, as a team, come together to put in place the best possible risk mitigation strategies we could, the best possible provision of personal protective equipment that we could, and worked closely with our clinicians and all of our team members to ensure that they had confidence in the processes that we were implementing. And we have been part of the response for WA since the very beginning. We did the repatriation of the West Australians who came into WA at Learmonth. They were the first ones to arrive back from the Wuhan province. And we flew people to Perth, and we were also part of the Diamond Princess repatriation that came into Darwin from overseas and flew patients there as well. So we've been refining those techniques ever since. It really does demonstrate the importance of a team. It's an absolute team effort. There wasn't any single individual who could have done that. We needed to be together to make the best possible decisions for our people. And I've learned more than anything just how much stronger we are when we operate together as a team and we rely on each other's respective skill sets to really get the best possible outcome. I've also learned that a sense of humour can go a long way in some very challenging circumstances.
I can imagine. Gosh, it's like sending people really into battle if you like. It's, where you don't know what the outcome's really going to be.
We genuinely didn't. And obviously, we know much more, and that's a fantastic piece to be, and it's a true credit to the West Australian government's leadership, also that of the healthcare industry, that we have the position that we do. But it can't be underestimated, some of the components that sort of contributed to particularly those early days and what it was like, the courage, and that's what I've, absolutely taken away is, I knew that our people were amazing, but it is just truly a privilege to see the absolute courage and commitment that every single person has individually shown to be able to provide the response that we have. That's just amazing.
Fantastic. And often those folks go unrecognised a lot. We talk about sporting people and, people in society that get lots of accolades, but it's folks that are in the RFDS that should really be recognised and lauded for their courage and bravery.
Yeah, and absolutely to that collaboration piece, it's a real team effort. So it's everyone from the emergency department in the hospital to the St John's ambulance service team, the Aboriginal medical services on the ground, Silver Chains medical posts and their nursing teams, the general community members. People talk a lot about, I have the great privilege of representing a quintessential Australian story, really. John Flynn 90 years ago saw a problem, as an Australian does, and that was the ability to deliver healthcare to really remote areas, and he went about solving that. And, today, we don't send a Band-Aid, we send a plane to some of the most remote places anywhere in the world, as only an Australian would do. And at a time when we're so accessible with technology and, we've got iPhones and watches that sort of talk to each other, I think that sense of purpose is what we represent. And I still feel that people want to connect with a sense of purpose, what it really means to be part of a community and how to contribute. And I think our pandemic response has shown that as well, that it's a whole of West Australia response.
Fantastic. And that connection to purpose is becoming so much more important.
Yeah, we've learned a lot about that as people, haven't we? That what they talk about that as the great shift, the great movement away, as people are asking themselves, is this what I really want to do?
Yeah. Now, you talked a little bit earlier about when you first came in and you had conversations with the board, and obviously a CEO always needs the support and endorsement of the board, but you yourself are chair of the Wheatbelt Development Commission. I am. And that board, that chair CEO role is such an important one, but often one that has a lot of positive tension, if you like.
Yeah.
So what did you learn, when you stepped into a CEO role? What was the learning you got as a chair, and vice versa, in terms of how you might work that relationship differently?
Yeah, I feel that I like to think, and obviously I have to ask my CEO, that I'm genuinely a better chair because I do appreciate the roles and responsibilities of the CEO and the very significant difference between what a CEO needs to deliver for an organisation and the responsibilities and the strategic direction, the risk and due diligence undertaken by a board. So I really feel there's an enhanced sense as a chair. I like to use the adage of staying out of the way to a certain extent for my chief executive because I have the immense privilege with the board experience that I have as a CEO where the board has set a very clear direction. We've developed a very structured risk analysis and a clear understanding of those deliverables. And as a leadership team, it's our responsibility to deliver on those. And being able to see that operate at the level that it does within the Royal Flying Doctor, then I'm able as a chair to hopefully emulate that. But of course, that's my sense of what that experience is really like. But I do feel it does enable that clear understanding of the difference between the roles. But I would absolutely concur that the relationship between a chief executive and particularly the board chair is absolutely integral to the delivery of that strategy. It really is.
So what's next for RFDS and the CEO? What's your hope for the next 5 years?
Yeah, it is very exciting. There's been significant disruption across healthcare. I know that's a very obvious statement for people right now. Before COVID, we were working with our ICT strategy. Technology is moving in leaps and bounds in healthcare. I talk a lot about space is next for the RFDS, and sometimes I get a little, people kind of go seriously. But quite genuinely, that's no more audacious than John Flynn, if you look contextually 90 years ago, saying he was going to put a doctor in a plane and send them to deliver healthcare, because even planes were in their infancy at that stage. So what we are really skilled at is the delivery of remote care and the delivery of that in a way with very specialised clinicians. And space is another new outback adventure in a different kind of way, and particularly in WA, because the remote technologies that have been developed through mining and the applications of those across other industries, to be able to partner with that to deliver healthcare in that environment, I really do feel is very exciting. And certainly leveraging the opportunities that technology will deliver. We've seen the advancement of telehealth through COVID-19. We've seen the application of new technologies for diagnostics, and certainly as a community, the more that we can embrace what technology can deliver for us. And that's the muscle memory that you sort of referred to that we're looking to build as an organisation. I'd love to say to everyone, I should say, that there's not going to be any more change, but that's the piece that's the most consistent, is there's going to be change. But building muscle memory to be able to manage through that's important.
That sounds exciting.
I think so. And I think it's
daunting, but exciting.
Yeah. And genuinely that sense of possibility, patients are at the centre of everything that we do, and we've continued to innovate over those 90 years, a little bit like a Benjamin Button, where we kind of get younger with age, and we need to continue to, I know they're quite buzzwords at the moment, but agility and flexibility, we need to continue to build that into our organisation. And, what we are seeing, we brought on board the Rio Tinto Lifelight PC-24. We're the first to use that jet aircraft capability for aeromedical service delivery anywhere in the world. And we were the first to do that here in Western Australia. It's quite amazing. And earlier this year, we brought on board the two EC-145s, Fortescue Helimed helicopters. We're the first in Australia for the Royal Flying Doctor Service to use rotary wing aircraft for an into-hospital transfer. So, those are very exciting developments for our patients. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, is that patient care.
And I don't think people kind of put technology, innovation and RFDS in the same sentence, but it's clearly been at the forefront of your strategy and your ability to do so much more for the communities and for patients.
And I think that's a really big part of what being a community benefit organisation enables us to do, is that investment into our people and into our technologies and our corporate partnerships to really be able to cement the relationship with the community. We're very privileged that West Australians generously fundraise and contribute to us each and every year, and we use that to be able to enhance the capability of the service. And certainly John Flynn's mantle of safety was all about continuing to deliver the very best possible care we could, regardless of where you lived or worked in Australia. And in order to do that, we need to embrace those technologies, as daunting as some of that can be, and sometimes as audacious as a statement like going to space may imply. Our clinicians, our engineers, our pilots, our flight nurses, our administration team, our risk, our audit teams are just incredible in their ability to interpret and deliver in remote settings. We actually built freezers for the back of the aircraft to take the Pfizer vaccination out into remote communities, and the engineers, right down to being able to, with pieces of wood, separate the vials so they didn't rattle in flight. It's quite extraordinary just how creative and really innovative people are.
I can see there's so much excitement still left in you in terms of doing this role. My last question to you is, knowing what you know now, all the experience and wisdom you've gained, particularly in this role, but in other roles, what advice would you give to your much younger self starting out in her career?
Wear sunscreen, I think, is the adage. That's actually true. I think you can't know enough about yourself, and what I feel is really important is to continue to, I know possibly Margaret, not so much to someone like you, but I sort of talk about that I have a little bit of a, I see the possibility a lot, and sometimes that can be overwhelming for other people, and being able to just understand how you see the world and the way in which you make decisions. The more you know about that, the more you can leverage that to really work with the skills and attributes of the team, rather than have some of those behaviours inadvertently not be the very best way in which the organisation can grow and develop. So for myself, the more you can invest in understanding how you think, the more you can invest in understanding the way in which you operate as a leader, particularly in stressful environments, then the stronger that is for the world.
Fantastic, Rebecca. Look, I look forward to seeing RFTS go into space in whatever shape or form that takes, but perhaps your team will buy you a spacesuit next.
Thank you. Oh, wow. I look forward to that.
So thank you very much for speaking with us.
Pleasure. Absolutely pleasure. Thanks, Margaret.